Good morning everyone, how are you doing? I hope you're doing good because it's good to feel good. You join me on another morning here in Tirana, but today we're actually heading out of Tirana for a change. We are going to the coastal city of Durrës. There's a lot to explore there, and also then we've got a bit of downtime later to go for some swimming, so I've brought my swim gear with me, I've got my GoPro with me. So I've got a few good things to look forward to today, and then eventually we'll be back in Tirana, and I think I'm gonna, because of how worn down I feel, I think I'm going to have a nice rest when I get back to Tirana later. But anyway, besides the point, let's enjoy today, let's go to Durrës, and let's have a lovely time. Okay, we've made it to the city of Durrës. We've got some lovely views up here so far, and we've got this nice villa as our first little stop of the day, so we're going to have a nice little bit of exploration. So the building that we're currently in at the moment is called the King Zog Villa, and it's interesting to note how it was built specifically for King Zog I of Albania, who was coronated in 1928. This building was kind of like built as a gift to the king, if that makes sense, and it wasn't finished until 1938. So it was intended to be like a long-lasting villa for like a royal residence, but ironically it didn't last that long because of course only a few years later, with the rise of Enver Hoxha, then obviously Albania embraced communism, and the monarchy was abolished, full stop. But it's interesting to note how like there are a lot of countries in the world where they still have like the remnants of like the times of monarchy there, but of course like the monarchy is completely abolished. So it's interesting that there are countries that keep that as part of their history. I gotta say, even though obviously the villa is no longer in working condition, I gotta say you can't beat a good view like this. How lovely it is, and just like a view of the Adriatic Sea. How wonderful. I've got to say, you've got to be quite a wealthy person to have like a working lift mechanism in your villa. I've got to say, even though that villa itself is no longer in working condition, it's now just a tourist attraction, it's quite nice to think that all this balcony space, you could just relax in the sun. Our guide was saying how actually in terms of balconies there's one on like the upper floor, and I think actually this one in particular was used more for kind of like for soldiers, for more like strategic positions. Also just worried the fact that like because of how like derelict this villa now technically is, I always get the feeling of like just walking through those stairs and like the floor like comes loose or something like that. Let's not manifest anything like that. So we've also just wandered off now. This is what was the remnants of like the old castle wall of Durrës. So over here we've got the remnants of what was an amphitheatre. It's interesting to note how when I was in Jordan 6 months ago, I saw quite a fair few amphitheatres. Saw one in Amman, saw one in Jerash, and I also saw one like when I was at Petra as well. So it's interesting again how far and wide the Romans really spread their influence, here in the Balkans, which was more or less just across the sea from Italy, and also even as far as the Middle East. So it's crazy how far they stretched. Got another vantage point of our amphitheatre over here. It's interesting to think like how on a lot of my travels I've seen all sorts of countries where there's like Roman influence, and it's kind of the question is, how did the Romans get about so far and wide? And I think the answer is very simple. They were just roaming around. So this is like the Grand Mosque of Durrës, this is, and it's interesting to note how, like I was mentioning the other day, how during the communism era of Albania, where religion was basically outlawed, so buildings like churches and mosques were repurposed for different things. And then of course when the fall of communism happened in the early 90s, then religion was basically reinstated and churches and mosques, resumed their original purposes. So, I'll tell you what, walking along, we've got a little bit of free time we have at the moment before we need to beat back with our guide, and currently walking on this really nice promenade. And I don't know why, I don't know if it's just myself, but it reminds me a little bit of like, you know, countries in like Mediterranean Europe where, you know, they've got the same kind of idea. So this one in particular reminds me a little bit of Barcelona. I've also just noticed as well that there's the King Zog Villa where we were earlier today. So just enjoying a nice little bit of downtime here. So got a nice little breeze in the air, and I'm just right by the sea as well. This feels lovely. And I think sometimes, like, you know, as much as I do a fair bit on my travel, I also find it a bit important to like just take a bit of time to relax. And I know in a little while, a little later today, we're going to go to another beach where we're going to have some like swimming time as well. So definitely gonna enjoy that as well. But yeah, it's just nice to kind of clear your mind, clear your head and all sorts, and just enjoy the relaxation feeling. So I've noticed a few buildings here in Durrës, and even when I've been in Tirana, how I think these have been abandoned, or like they're derelict from like the communist times. So maybe that's just a metaphor of like, because they were a symbol of communism or something, that's why they're purposefully abandoned. I don't know, maybe that's just my interpretation. I wouldn't definitely know, but that's just how I perceive it. So another thing that's worth pointing out, and our guide was saying how even though Durrës is the main port city of Albania, it's also the main port city by extension for landlocked countries that are in the region. So the likes of Kosovo, North Macedonia and Serbia all rely on like exporting their goods all from Durrës. And I was noticing as well, because there's a lack of railway infrastructure in this country, that he'd basically be driving from all over those countries all the way to Durrës. So that must be a long journey in itself. But I tell you one thing that I have noticed is there are the remnants of like old railway lines in this country, and our guide was actually saying that Albania are slowly but surely rebuilding like railway infrastructure in this country, and hopefully in years to come we'll see some more great railways pop up in Albania. But that's also brought me on to something. You guys may or may not know that I'm slowly but surely getting myself back into trains, railways and all sorts. And I'd like to go to some more countries where, you know, they've got a rich railway history and like, you know, some great railway infrastructure, and take some many journeys whilst I'm there. Okay, we have come to a little seaside town called Golem. There's a really nice beach here which I'm just walking along at the moment. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to change into the swim gear and enjoy just a little bit of time by the beach. And maybe get a little swim in as well, why not? Okay, change into the swim gear. First thing we're going to do is just take our dip our feet in the water. Oh, that is actually quite nice and cool. I might just have to take a dip. Oh, it actually feels, you know, it'll be a lot warmer in a few months' time, like around July, August, but even in April, this actually feels quite decent. Oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh, oh. All right, just taking a little bit of a dip, so to say. I'm trying not to submerge myself in the water too much. I think what it is, if this was like July or August, I definitely would be like, you know, sinking myself in. Although, should we just do it? Why not? Oh, that is cool. Like I say, July, August, maybe that's all right, but in April, maybe not so hot. All right, so we're just enjoying some downtime on the beach. I've enjoyed a nice little dip. I'll tell you what I'm doing right now is I'm just enjoying walking on the sand in my bare feet, and also the sand feels quite warm right now, so it does feel quite nice and all kinds of lovely. Okay, I've just made it back to the hostel. You know the drill by now. I'm gonna have my little siesta and then venture out for the evening and, you know, maybe see the sunset again. I might go to a different vantage point and do that. But tonight is gonna be a very chill one in particular, just because tomorrow's a very early start. But I will say it's been lovely experiencing Durrës and going to Golem and, you know, going to the beach. So shout out to Eli for that, for being a great guide and obviously providing us with a bit of knowledge. And from what I've learned about obviously Albania so far, there's plenty of history to this country. And of course that is going to continue on till tomorrow. But anyway, I'm going to enjoy my siesta. I'll see you guys in a few hours. Okay, so I have ventured out for this evening. I don't really know what I'm going to do, to be honest. I'd quite like to catch another sunset somewhere. Where I watch the sunset from? I don't know. Probably seemed a bit bad luck to go back to where I was yesterday. So I'm going to try and like shake things up and see if I can find somewhere else to enjoy the sunset from. Also, I'm a bit starving, and even though my mind's being like, oh, we should go for some, really nice food somewhere, I don't know why, but I really fancy something easy, which is not good of me. And it's so easy to resort to like fast food when you're abroad, but just not making it a habit though, that's the thing. But yeah, let's go and enjoy a good evening. Okay, we've come back to the pyramid, and I think from up here is where we're going to view the sunset, because it looks like you can see the sun shining down on there, and it just seems like the right time for it. Okay, so I've just started walking up here. Literally as I'm doing this, I've just done 10,000 steps for today, so we're doing all right. And oh, it looks lovely. It's glowing on me. Okay, that is mission accomplished. 2 nights in a row, we've got some really cool Albanian sunsets. But now I'm gonna go just venture out, do some few things before I go back to my hostel. Just see, there's a few little nook and crannies I wanna see. Because you might go to a place for the first time, but then you like discover things and you're like, oh, this looks really cool. So yeah, let's go check a few things out. Nothing says like connecting people and building bridges like a bridge literally sponsored by Vodafone. What an incredible piece of marketing this is. Well, this is quite cool. So I imagine this is probably here from like an earlier civilization, but there's literally like, in addition to your roads and your paths and everything, there's like an old stone bridge here. This is quite cool. And just like that, I am back in my hostel. It has been a very fun, lovely evening. I'm very tired, but it's been a great day nonetheless. Shout out to Eli from earlier, who was a great guide, took us to Durrës. We learned a lot about the culture and the history there, and also just getting to enjoy some time at the beach in Golem. And then of course, me venturing out into Tirana, going back to the pyramid and just seeing the sunset from there. That was a very good shout, because it was a very nice vantage point seeing the sunset from up there. And then just some of the little things I've seen, that mosque that I saw, as well as that stone bridge. I was reading it's called Tanner's Bridge, and it makes me think that like it's probably there from like hundreds of years ago, and because it's so iconic, it was like, let's not knock it down, let's just keep it there. It looks cool there, it looks aesthetically pleasing, you could say. But anyway, it has been a lovely day, and now that I'm back in the hostel, I'm gonna get an early night, and that's probably gonna do me a world of good, because tomorrow is a very big day ahead of, and it's probably the biggest day of my trip here so far. Tomorrow we are venturing out of Albania, and we are going to Prizren in Kosovo, and Shkupe, I think is how you pronounce it, in North Macedonia. So we are going to 2 new countries tomorrow. So quite nice that we've come to a new country in Albania, and then we've got 2 new countries as well, Kosovo and North Macedonia, to tick off. So you're going to join me bright and early for that, so I'm going to get a good night's sleep, and I'm going to leave you with some advice as well, and that is always to enjoy yourself, stay safe, and make the most of every opportunity that comes your way. Thank you for watching, and peace.